One of the most important masterpieces at the Cairo Museum of Antiquities is the Narmer Palette. Narmer, that king who founded the first dynasty and became the first pharaoh who wore the double crown, which means the pharaoh of the United Kingdom, Upper and Lower Egypt. Egypt pre-dynasties consisted of two parts, Upper and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt, which is nowadays Luxor, Aswan, the southern part of Egypt, while the lower Egyptian part is the Delta, Cairo, Giza, and so on. At the same time, or the same moment, two pharaohs ruled both parts until Narmer or Mena, he actually battled against the king from the northern part of Egypt because he came from the southern part. He battled against, at the end, he won the battle and he became the first pharaoh who ruled Egypt as a pharaoh of the United Kingdom. He recorded that unification on this nice and lovely gray rock or schist stone palette. So let's see what's going on here. First of all, the material of this palette is actually which called the schist, and this is a gray rock. This palette measures 62-63 centimeters in height, 41 centimeters in width, and around 2.6 centimeters in thickness. And this palette was discovered in an area called Hierakonpolis, Qom el-Ahmar, and was discovered by Quibble in 1894. It dates to the pre-dynastic period, about 3,000 years before Christ. And this palette actually commemorates the victories of Narmer, who is identified with King Menes, M-E-N-E-S, the unifier of Upper and Lower Egypt. The historical events commemorated here, which seem to have led to the unification of the country. The beginnings of official hieroglyphic writing, the divine representations, and royal iconographic themes all combine to render this palette one of the most important masterpieces at the Cairo Museum of Antiquities. So, this palette actually consisted of two sides. This side here in front of us, we call it the front side, okay? And showing here the battlefield actually against the people from the northern part of Egypt. Here we see something important. The upper part of the palette, front and the back sides, we're gonna see it later, is decorated with the representation of one of the goddesses, by the way. And actually, some people believe that she's a cow goddess Hathor, but actually, if you look at or if you check the Hathor horns, you're gonna find that it's open to the outer side, but this here are curved actually to the inner side. So this god is actually called Mehit. Mehit, one of the protectors at that time, the beginning of the pharaonic history. Remember something important, that is the Mehit goddess's heads, the two heads at the upper part of the palette, they are flanking the name of the king, Narmer or Minas. The name or this name, as you see here, by the way, I mean this here, for example, is written inside the which called the serech, this square or a little bit rectangular shape. The serech, which is the rectangular shape decorated with the paneling resembling the facade of the royal palace, and residing over it the falcon Horus. Later you're gonna see the serech, with the hieroglyphic signs for the fish nar, okay, above here, this one, and for the chisel mer, nar, mer. So this is Narmer or Minas, by the way, the king's name. The two signs could give different readings and meanings than in other periods. Here, for example, it's an early form of development. Okay, the suggested meaning are two. The digger of the canal could be, or the beloved of Hitmehit, taking that the sign Nar or the fish was a sign of a primitive lower Egyptian goddess called Hitmehit, meaning the leader of the north. The sign Mer, this one I mean, which is the chisel, gives the meaning of beloved. If this second meaning is taken into consideration, then it would be to explain how King Narmer tried to gain acceptance of the Northerns after unifying Lower and Upper Egypt. So, now let's see the front side and the information that you're gonna know about it. Here we see the king or the pharaoh, Narmer or Minas. He's standing, okay, and holds the enemy by the hair, evidence of control. The king Narmer or Minas is holding in his right hand, by the way, a weapon, we call it the mashead, with his right hand, and is about to smite an enemy who he is holding with his left hand from his tuft of hair. Okay? The enemy, as we see here, is kneeling position, showing signs of humiliation. Behind the enemy, you're gonna find something important. There are two hieroglyphic symbols or signs. The harpoon, wa, that means one, and the lake sign, the rectangular, like the water pool, for example, we pronounce sh. These two signs either give the name of the enemy or refer to him as the one of the lake, thus reference to Lower Egypt to say that this enemy is from Lower Egypt, which the king is battling against. Okay? Behind the king is his Sandal Bearer, and the perfume or the water bearer too, who is represented on a much smaller scale or size, reference to that he is less important. For example, the bigger size, the more important, and the smaller, of course, is the less important. In one hand, this Sandal Bearer, okay, he's holding the king's sandals, and in the other he is carrying a jar which is probably contains water for purification or perfume. Nobody knows exactly. Near him we find the two hieroglyphic signs, the flower biti and the jar hem. Here we can see it, the flower. Here we can see behind his head, okay, biti, and the jar hem. So hem biti we read, which means the servant of the king of Lower Egypt. As I read or as I studied that the flower, by the way, symbolized the pharaoh from Lower Egypt, which is similar to or the same as the bee. We're gonna see it later. Nisud Biti, I mean. Okay. We can see also that the king himself is wearing the white crown or the cone-shaped crown, means the pharaoh from Upper Egypt. He wanted to tell us, I came from Upper Egypt, from the south. And he's wearing also the false beard. The false beard in ancient Egyptian life or time, they used to made it from wood, gold, silver, bronze or copper, but wasn't solid, massive, by the way, so it wasn't heavy. The kings used to wear it, by the way, by using, as you see here on his right side chest, by the way, the check that he used a leather belt, by the way. Remember that there was 3 different shapes of the false beards. Long straight means that he's alive, a king or a pharaoh, and the position that he's standing or sitting, always the hands or his arms at the side, or flattening his hand if he was sitting on his knees, or one hand like King Joseph on his heart. That means he's alive. The second shape is long straight at the end is curved. That means that he's a dead king, and the hand position should be crossed, like the Osiris position or the death position, and also means a god. The third shape is the short one. The short one means a noble, a rich person, a priest, or a scribe, one of the officials. Our king here, by the way, as we see, is wearing also the shendit. The shendit, by the way, this is that means the royal skirt, by the way. Okay, so he's wearing the shendit as we see here, but we can see behind you can see a bull tail attached to the king's belt. This is the bull tail or the ox tail that he wanted to tell us that I got the power like an ox or like a bull. That's what I mean. So, something important about the king himself. We can see here that he is standing without his sandals, which is held by the Sandal Bearer. Why he had to do this? Because what we can see here is that he is standing in front of the falcon-headed god Horus, the god of protection and the god of flying. Remember that is the pharaoh had to respect the god, so he took off his sandals. There is also some other idea. That is the king in the field to control his movement and so on. So he had to take off his sandals, by the way. And if you look at the falcon-headed god here, Horus is standing as we see here on top of 6 papyrus plants. The papyrus plants, by the way, as we see, gives an ancient Egyptian number 1000, or papyrus branch, by the way, so that it might be the pharaoh he wanted to tell us, I killed 6,000 of the enemies, or a big number. The falcon Horus, by the way, places his other claw atop the papyrus plants, which also explains the control of the king over Lower Egypt, since the king is definitely the representative of Horus on earth. Remember something important, that the falcon or Horus has a human hand. This human hand is the king's hand himself. He wanted to tell us that I am the king under the control of the falcon-headed god. I controlled over the enemies from Lower Egypt. That's why we can see the rope means the control. Remember something also important, that is the bottom of the register shows 2 killed enemies fleeing away down here. Okay, they are accompanied by 2 hieroglyphic signs, either of their names or their homelands, but we do not know exactly the locations. This is here the front side of Narmer Palette. Let's see the back side of it. Here we go. The back side showing here the triumphal procession of the Narmer king after having achieved his victory over the people of the north. He's showing here with all the signs of reality as we see here. But let's start from the top. Here we see something important. The same goddess, Mehitwert. And in the middle or between the 2 heads of Mehitwert goddess, the cow goddess, we see the king's name is a little bit bigger, Na'armar. The second register, we see here the king himself. Okay. The king is wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt in hieroglyphs or ancient Egyptian language named Deshert, which means the red. And he's wearing the false beard and the royal kilt or skirt. He's holding the flail, the nechech, in his right hand, okay, which he brings close to his chest, while the masthead, his weapon, is down, aside, which means he wanted to tell us the battle is over. By the way, sometimes people believe that this king might be the king from the north or from Lower Egypt. So the Pharaoh, he did something fascinated. What? He ordered, it seemed that the one who carved this palette, to copy his name inside the serech here, above the first register, and he pasted it here in front of his head to know that this name is the same. So he wanted to tell us, this is me, Na'armar, nobody else. So he proved that this king is himself. The same person behind him, as we see. Okay. The Sandal Bearer, again on a small scale, and shown with his title above him. The king is preceded by his Thati. Look at this. Here is Thati. This person here, who is wearing, by the way, a leopard skin, which means the visor, or also a higher priest. As the two hieroglyphs, by the way, or hieroglyphic signs read, in front of this high rank person are 4 people and 4 standard bearers, 3 of whom are bearded, by the way. Each standard carries a sign on top, which are from left to right: a piece of flesh, a jackal, falcon for the 3rd and 4th. Okay, so something important about this motif here, or this register. The king, he is in a procession, by the way, to inspect the spoils of his war. We can see here 2 rows of captured enemies who are shown beheaded, and their heads are between their legs. Okay, here, as we see, and here, 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 and here. The same for the opposite side. Okay? Their hands are tied behind their backs and their legs are twisted to the inside. Above these 2 rows of enemies are some signs showing a falcon and a building. Possibility of a temple, which suggests that the procession ended at the temple of Horus. Another drawing is of a boat, which gives rise to 2 suggestions. For either it was the boat used by the king for the transport to Lower Egypt, or to another meaning that there was a harbor which was the destination of procession. Here, if we see the next register, showing here a scene of 2 mythical animals with long necks intertwined. They possibly refer to the 2 lands of Upper and Lower Egypt. two attendants trying to holding them by means of ropes. They try to stop the two animals from fighting, thus having complete control over the two lands. The most important part in this palette is the circular depression created by the intertwined necks, which was most probably used for the grinding of coal that was used for the beauty of the eye and its protection. Some others said it means the circle, the unification between Upper and Lower Egypt, but nobody knows exactly. The bottom register here, down there, we can see the king in the form of a bull smashing an enclosure wall of a building that could be a castle or a fortress of the enemies, and trampling over one of the enemies. The mighty bull, which is one of the titles of the king, Ka-Nechet, made his victory over the enemies of the delta, or the people of the delta. By the way, this palette, we call it the palette of Narmer, the first king who founded the both Upper and Lower Egyptian part. He united the both together, the both parts. Hope you really enjoyed the explanation. For any questions, just send me an email, WhatsApp me, watch my YouTube channel, or even any kind of any social medias. Thank you, and see you the next masterpiece.